One of the favorite memories that I have is when Lindsay and I went down to Greenfield, Ohio to hang out with my grandparents. We did this about one Friday a month when our kids were young. And they'd make us this big brunch, which was more food than 6 humans could reasonably eat in one sitting. We'd take walks with them on their property. They'd take us out to their huge garden, and they'd pick some vegetables, and then they'd pick a bunch of fruit from their fruit trees, and we'd go home with this big grocery bag of organic food. But on this particular day, something special happened. We started asking questions about their childhood, what their parents were like, what their grandparents were like. Of course, I already knew some of that because my grandpa was a consummate family man, and for every year of my life, he'd invited his 12 brothers and sisters with their grandkids and kids and great-grandkids to their house for this huge picnic. And so I got to know a lot of those people. And then on my grandma's side, I had my great-grandma Shoemaker until I was 30, and I even had her father, my great-great-grandpa Barnes, until I was 6. He was 104 years old when he died. But there's still so much that I didn't know about their families. And so on that day, as we asked questions, they told us stories, and they brought out these old photo albums. They told me some stuff that grounded me in a new way. For example, my grandpa told me for the first time ever that day that his grandma and great-grandma were both singer-songwriters who could play the piano. And so that's a gift that my mom passed on to me, but one that I had no idea ran at least 5 generations deep. That was an amazing day, and there are like lots of days that I wish that I could go back and sit with my grandpa around that table one more time, to hear him tell the story of how he and grandma met one more time, to ask him questions I never thought to ask before, but I can't. He passed away not too long after that, exactly 2 years ago this week. This is our new series on family, and the title, Family Matters, of course, is an obvious reference to the 1990s sitcom, and it's a play on words, because we're dealing with the matters of the family, and we're talking about how much family actually matters. So everybody has an experience with family. Some are very positive, some are very negative, and everything in between. And that overall experience has affected you every moment of your life, whether you acknowledge it or not, whether you've ever come to grips with that or not. Our family of origin has played a nearly unquantifiable role in shaping who each of us are today. I'm going to be honest with you. The teaching this morning is intended to be somewhat confrontational to the modern model of family. So it might be difficult, and you might get upset with me for pushing on some of your beliefs. But I'm not sure there's a more pressing conversation for the church to have at this point in time. It's so important for us to get family right if we want to take the kingdom into every home, neighborhood, and city. In fact, one of our 6 priorities as a community is this: we embrace discipleship as the centerpiece of our homes. Now, there are 2 main reasons why family is such a hard topic to discuss. First, family is a complicated subject for us Americans in 2018. I hope that you can appreciate, but it's more complicated for us than it's been for any other culture in the history of the world. Because when we talk about family right now, we're bringing all kinds of things into the equation. Second reason it's difficult is because family hits close to home for all of us, no pun intended. It's personal. And we all kind of know how crazy our families are, but we don't really like for anyone else to talk about that. Like one country song says, you can't live with or without them. You might talk about them, but if someone else does, well, you'll knock them out. Because family is family. In church or in prison, you get what you get and you don't get to pick them. They might smoke like chimneys, but give you their kidneys. Yeah, friends come in handy, but family is family. Yeah, family is funny. They'll ask you for money, even though they know you ain't got no money. They show up at Christmas, get up in your business. They might not be fancy, but family is family. And we believe this conversation about family has to start with a simple question that you might have asked before, you might not have. Why does your family exist? Why does your family exist? This question lays the groundwork for great conversations to happen. And honestly, by the time Lindsay and I were married with 2 children, we had never really stopped to ask that question. Yeah, we'd had conversations about how we'll do family, what we'd like to keep from the way our parents raised us and what we'd like to leave behind. But like Simon Sinek says, you've got to start with why. Why does your family exist? Now, the Bible actually addresses this question. Genesis chapter 1 says, "Then God said, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness, so that they may rule over the fish of the sea and the birds in the sky, over the livestock and all the wild animals, and over all the creatures that move along the ground." So God created mankind in his own image. In the image of God, he created them. Male and female, he created them. God blessed them and said to them, "Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. Rule over the fish in the sea and the birds in the sky, and over every living creature that moves on the ground." So humans were created to expand the rule of God on earth. Think of this in terms of physical plots of land. As families grew, they would cover more land and steward that land to make it suitable as a temple for God and humans to live together. Family is the way that was going to happen. Be fruitful and increase in number. Fill the earth and subdue it. In other words, apart from family, humans cannot do what God created them to do. See, family is the basic building block of humanity. Family is the basic building block of humanity. The Bible is actually focused on one family. It tells the story of this one family. It starts with Adam and Eve, moves on to a guy named Noah, a man named Abraham, his son Isaac, his son Jacob. Jacob's sons and some grandsons are the fathers of the 12 tribes of Israel. One of his sons, Judah, who we're going to talk about in a minute, has a lineage which eventually has a guy named David and his son Solomon, and the lineage continues until Jesus arrives, a descendant of Solomon, David, Judah, Jacob, Isaac, Abraham, Noah, and Adam. The descendant that had been promised long ago, one who would come one day and crush the head of the serpent. That's a promise that's found in the first 1,800 words of the Bible, but one that took thousands of years to come to fruition. See, God chose family as the vehicle for redemption. Why? Well, don't exactly know. We just know that in God's created order, family lines are the bedrock of human relationship. That's the way he designed it. So as with everything, when we live within God's creative design, we thrive and we experience a full life. Family is the most powerful tool humans have to sustain continuity in seeking God and doing his will on the earth. It's the most powerful tool that we have. And when family is done right, it's extraordinary. When family is done right, neighborhoods thrive, entire cities thrive, nations thrive, and not just for one generation, but generation after generation. That's what happens when we live within that design. But when the model of family is in trouble, the world is in trouble. See, the breakdown of the family unit creates a crack in the infrastructure of society that cannot be compensated for by anything else. You name it, education, affluence, success. None of these things can fix the crack in the infrastructure of society that the breakdown of family causes. So a great question is, well, what's behind the breakdown of family? A few years ago, Lindsay and I were introduced to a work called Refamily, written by Jeremy Pryor, who's the creator of Story Formed Life. And this document totally rocked our world, totally challenged our paradigm. While I'm not exactly quoting him today, the general ideas I'm trying to get across are things that he challenged us with. He spent time in Israel many years ago, and he started to notice that there's a drastic difference in the way they did family and the way that we do it here. And upon further examination, he realized that the way we do it here is different than almost every other culture in the history of the world. So what's the difference? And what lies behind the breakdown of the family in the West? These are really three things that contribute to that, which we'll explore over the next few weeks and forevermore as we journey forward. This is like 3 ways that you can see families that really are game changers. The first is that families are teams. Families are teams. The main premise here is that while families are made up of individuals, they're intended to be working toward the same goal. So individuals are unique so that they might contribute to the forward thrust of the group's mission, as opposed to the family serving as a launching pad for each individual to live their own mission. If that sounds confusing, think about this in terms of team dynamics. We've all seen teams that are full of individuals that are committed to working toward accomplishing something together, where everyone knows their role on the team. They go all in for the sake of the team, accomplishing the goal. The individuals take a backseat to the whole. Maybe you've been a part of something like that. When it happens, whether it's in your house or in a workplace, in government, in a civic board, on a sports team, wherever, it's a beautiful thing. But we've also seen what happens when a group of individuals that are committed first to themselves try to accomplish something together. No matter how talented the team is, everything starts to fall apart. See, a lot of families in America are really just several individuals living together under the same roof, each trying to be successful for themselves. Moms and dads are trying to help each of their children be successful in whatever mission they choose, while both of them try to be successful in the mission that they've chosen. This is because our Western family model is by and large a product of individualism. It's a model that says the family exists for the benefit of each individual. And it's a very new idea in the scope of things. Less than 200 years old. Like no other culture on earth has ever tried this experiment before, and I think we're seeing why. These 200 years have presented some pretty strong evidence that it doesn't work very well. A much more classic view of family in terms of human history says each individual exists for the benefit of the family. Just like a team, when every individual is focused on what's best for the family, it changes everything. But this isn't an easy task, right, to ask what's best for our family. It's countercultural. We ask what's best for dad's career, what's best for mom's career. We do ask those all the time. We ask what activities does everyone want to be involved in, and how are we going to juggle all of that so that everybody can do what they want to do. But these are individualistic questions. One other cultural thing, or countercultural thing, is that grandparents and great-grandparents have always been included in the team. Like in most cultures, they're actually the leaders of the team. Aunts and uncles play a big role too, but in the West, we've got this model where each family kind of starts from square one. We see each generation independently from the last one or the next, which really points to the next like game-changing idea. The first one is families or teams. The second one is that families share a mission. Just like successful teams share a common reason for existing, a preferred future they're all working hard for, with a strategy to get there and values that guide their culture along the way. Families should. See, vision is a thing that gives us identity and purpose. Think about this. Family is a thing that God intended to show us who we are. But our country specifically is full of people having crises of identity. They don't know who they are. And that's no surprise. I mean, that's kind of what we celebrate. That's what we tell our kids. You just need to find yourself. This is maybe what lies behind the rise in genealogy research, which is now the second most visited category of websites on the internet. Recently named the second most popular hobby in the U.S. by several sources, outperformed only by the profession of our oldest ancestor, gardening. Searching for our roots ties us to something bigger. There's something grounding about knowing where we came from, who our ancestors were, what their lives were like. One of the most powerful things Pryor wrote was that in America, everyone seems to be searching to find themselves. And that is an indictment on the family. You only search for yourself when you haven't been shown who you are, and family is supposed to do that for you. But if family is only a collection of individuals living under the same roof for a brief period of time, if they've not been invited into a common mission with their mom and dad, grandparents, aunts and uncles, it shouldn't be surprising that children don't have any clarity on who they are or why they are here. There's an interesting chapter, Genesis 48. We find Jacob, the grandson of Abraham, on his deathbed. He's about to die, right? And he has his entire family there. But he starts speaking to each of them individually. And he starts with Joseph. He blessed Joseph and said, "The God before whom my ancestors, Abraham and Isaac, walked, the God who has been my shepherd all my life to this day, the angel who has redeemed me from all harm, bless the boys." Now what's happening is he has his two grandsons, Ephraim and Manasseh, on each of his legs, and he's blessing them. And listen to what he says about them. "In them let my name be perpetuated, and the name of my ancestors Abraham and Isaac, and let them grow into a multitude on the earth. I'm about to die," he tells Joseph, "but God will be with you and will bring you again to the land of your ancestors." That's what he tells to Joseph. But unfortunately, Joseph and everybody else in that room dies like a long time, 400 years before this vision becomes a reality. So Jacob is actually reminding his sons of the family vision, which is two parts. One part is the land of Canaan. So one day they'll return to the land of Canaan, something that every generation has to hold on to and pass on to the next, where God's given us this land of Canaan. God's given us this land, right? But they all die, like I said, 400 years before this vision becomes a reality. That doesn't make them any less a part of the family vision. It just means that they have to pass it on. They're accountable to passing on that vision to the next. That's one part, is the land of Canaan. The second part is the descendant, right? One day a descendant would come. All people on earth would be blessed through Abraham's family. Jacob moves on to that piece. He speaks directly to each of the other sons. He blesses them and at times curses the things they've done and say, that part of you needs to die as the family moves forward. Then he gets to his fourth son, Judah, and part of what he says to him is, "Look at Judah, crouched like a lion, king of beasts. Who dares mess with him? The scepter will not leave Judah. He'll keep a firm grip on the command staff," listen to this, "until the ultimate ruler comes and the nations obey him." A reminder that through this family, guys, this descendant is going to come. The descendant that the whole world has been waiting for. And once again, this is a promise that gives Abraham's family an identity and a purpose. This is what we're here for. But it's something that won't happen for a couple thousand years. None of them get to see this ruler. That doesn't make them any less a part of it. It doesn't make them any less accountable for passing that vision on. So game-changing ideas. Families are teams. Second thing is that families have a shared mission, vision. And then the third game-changing thing, which is so simple, is that families invest time. Just like teams have to invest time to see their vision through, so do families. Now, compared to history, families in our modern context spend very little time together. And our cultural demands are a part of that. See, for the first time in history, we have families waking up and then all of these individuals heading in different directions. Families are so busy. Now, if we're only around our children for an hour or two when we get home from work 3 nights a week and spend the other nights out, running around doing other things, what kind of team can we be? And if we only see each other for a few hours on the weekend between running errands and keeping up our hobbies, what can we accomplish together? Allow me to speak frankly. Some of you are like, I thought you were. Many of us have bought the cultural definition of family, hook, line, and sinker. We've not even questioned it and its validity. And it's easy to get sucked into. It happens to Lindsay and I all the time. But how many of us say our families can't make it to the weekend gathering? But we'd never say that to our child's coach. How many of us say our family doesn't have time for a base community, But we take the schedule the school gives us and we hang it on the refrigerator, and then we shape our work schedules and everything else around it. See, this is considered normal these days. But let me tell you, the data says you don't want to be normal. It doesn't go where you hope it goes. You say, but I don't want my kids to miss out. But what you don't want them to miss out on is an identity, a purpose, a thriving, dynamic pursuit of Jesus, their grandparents, their mom, their dad. Kevin Lehman, who's a prominent Christian psychologist, notes that he's never had anyone in his office cherishing the memories of practicing soccer 5 nights a week. See, the memories they relish from their years at home are the times when the whole family was gathered together, enjoying one another's company. Now, here's what we know about the way that people remember families in the West, is that we remember about 80 years back. That means that most of us don't know very much about our great-grandparents at all. We might not even know their names, let alone what they hoped for the family, what their dreams were, words they said or wrote, stories they told. Now, here's the sobering reality. Just as we don't know any of those things about our great-grandparents, if we continue to live within this model, our great-grandchildren won't know anything like that about us either. 80 years. The family memory in the classic family societies, though, is up to 1,000 years. To 1,000 years. Because they don't separate individuals from families. They have vision and values and stories that are poured into their children over and over and over and over and over. And they spend quality and quantity time together. Now, next week, we'll talk about marriage, and then the final week of the series about children. And we'll explore all this on a deeper level. But today, I would love for you to walk away from this asking the question, why does our family exist? Why does our family exist? Now, if we're followers of Jesus, the answer is clear. We exist to proclaim the good news about Jesus and his kingdom to all creation. That's our mission. That's the thing that gives us our identity. This is our purpose. So in other words, it's less for us about passing on the name of Duke or the last name that we have, and more about passing on the name of Christ. How will your family participate in that great mission? Figure out what God wants to do through your family. Write it down. Define your values that will guide how you pursue it together. Talk about it at the dinner table once a week. Think long term. I mean, what do you want for your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren? Have you ever asked that question? If at all possible, include the oldest members of your family. Work this out together, and then work toward it together. Third thing is, if you've come from a family situation that you don't want to continue perpetuating, because you had a pretty messed up family, and everything we're talking about today, I mean, these are things that you wouldn't want to pass on. You can draw a line in the sand and say the cycle of brokenness ends here with us. What will you hand your children and your grandchildren? Family is the way to make sustainable change, because that's the way that God designed it. There's this scene at the end of Joshua. Joshua is the guy that takes over for Moses. He lives his whole life, brings the people into the promised land. He's faithful to God, and he's on his deathbed, and he's talking to all of the tribal leaders. And he's reminding them of all the things that God has brought them from. He said, remember, God delivered us out of Egypt, and remember, he brought us through the wilderness, and he's always been our provision. Remember how he won this battle and that battle. Remember who he is. Do not forget it, and don't forget to pass this on to the next generation. And there's a line that he ends up saying in that speech that you might even have hanging in your house, which is, choose this day who you will serve. As for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. That's a declaration that you can make right now. Your family, draw a line in the sand and say, this is who we are, this is what we're about. I'll leave you with this Mother Teresa quote, which is, the best thing you can do to promote peace in the world is to go home and love your family. We no longer have the luxury of spending our energy on anything that does not lead us and our families to Christ.